So let's get into it. My name is Nick Olson. I'm from PredictWind, and so today we're going to talk about using PredictWind for your crossing. I don't have the route set up, but we're going to go through how to use the software and how to set your polars up, your weather routing settings, file sizes, and GPS tracking. So I will share my screen with PredictWind, and we specialize in marine weather, and in particular, on one of our biggest focus is cruises crossing oceans. We have a range of weather models that we use to help you with that, and a bunch of tools. You'll see there we have the global models. That's really what we're talking about when we're doing our crossings. You'll see here we've got this little banner about the exec that was officially launched yesterday. If you have registered for PredictWind, you would have seen that about a month ago. We sent out an email about that. Just an update to the Iridium Go. If you want to have a look at that, feel free. Go to the website and click through. You'll find a bunch of information about it. I've used one. It's pretty cool. But that's not saying that you can't just use your existing Iridium Go if you have one. And obviously, I know lots of people have Starlinks these days, and but yeah, so far as I know, you can't cross the Pacific with it. So what I will do is I will move my Zoom controls and just quickly talk about the apps that we use. So we have the PredictWind app and website. We will look at the PredictWind website to start, as we'll be setting up our polars for our boat. That's how fast our boat goes. But what we have here is the PredictWind app and website, and you use that when you are at the marina, when you've got a fast internet connection, cell connection. But then when you go offshore or away from a high-speed internet connection, and you're using, let's say, an Iridium Go connection or SSB, you need to use the offshore app. I would even be using that if you were going offshore or coastal using a connection like Starlink, because it saves everything offline. It has all the tools that we want for passage making in there. But the big thing is that you can be offline and still view the data and see your weather routing and your grids and etc. So that's really what we're going to talk about today, is setting up to use the offshore app. And so we'll go to the PredictWind website, and we're going to go in here and we're going to have a look at how we might plan for our passage. Obviously, there's a lot of pre-departure sort of steps that we can follow, such as looking at big picture stuff, looking at the patterns, seeing what's developing, looking at the GMDSS forecasts, for example, and seeing what the meteorologists are saying about things developing in our area, and trying to start picking our weather window. And then from there, we might go into using something like our departure planning tool, and sort of narrow down a departure time. Obviously, if you're going from Panama to French Polynesia, you're looking at a very big trip. But even if you're splitting that to going to the Galapagos, you're still looking at some very big passages. So you're going to have to use the tools in the offshore app to you make your best decision on when you depart, but also once you're underway, manage any situations that arise with the weather. Obviously, things can develop over longer periods of time and on longer passages, and so you need to use the tools to manage that. And we'll have a look at that shortly. So I'll stop talking about that, and we'll come down here to the tools in PredictWind. So you can do this in the PredictWind forecast website, so on a web browser, and you can do most of this in the PredictWind app as well. And you need to set this stuff up before you use the offshore app. So we've got our tools there now to you for your passage, or any of your passages, because we can use the AIS data to sort of see where any fishing fleets are, etc., and you know, any or high traffic zones. Anyway, let's have a look at the weather routing. So what I want to talk about here, I can easily change my track here. We'll pretend like we're underway. Before we can use the weather routing, we need to set up our polars. And so what the polars are is how fast the software thinks your boat is going to go. So there's a couple of ways you can do this. The easiest way is to go into this routing preferences here, boat polar, and then come to this predefined and look in this list and select your boat or one that you know is similar, has similar performance to yours. Now you want to, once you've selected one of these, you want to go and validate it as such. What should we be today? I feel like being a catamaran. Leopard 50. Let's do it. So I've selected my boat. I'm in the predefined. If I wanted to, or my boat wasn't there, or there wasn't one that I was similar to, or I know that my boat does, you know, it might only do 6 knots everywhere, I could use this one here called sail. And that is really easy to set up. You can put upwind at 50 degrees, true wind angle. You know, this here says 5 knots, 90 degrees says 10. Don't know why it would say that, but let's make it 6 knots. And downwind at 160 degrees, true wind angle, we're doing 6 knots. We can also turn on our motoring settings. We won't do that because we can do that in the offshore app. You'll see up here, we can change our polar speed adjustment. So we can also do that in the offshore app. So we'll just leave that as it is. But you can see that I had this set up to go slower at night. And obviously it was too fast downwind. Let's just put that back on 100%. And we'll just put that on 100% too. Okay, so we're on sail. I could also use advanced, but I could come back here and I could go to my predefined and I could copy my predefined polar over to advanced. The reason I would do that would be if I ran my weather route and I looked at the output and I decided that I wasn't happy with what the predefined polar said, as in it's faster than I sail in general or just some particular areas. And so I can come through here and I can change my true wind angle and the boat speed for that true wind angle for each wind. So true wind speed of 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 20. You know, you can add these in. You can add more rows and columns. And then that creates this polar curve over here. You see as I move through each of those, that it highlights it. You can see here, this is a catamaran. I'll just make that bigger. And obviously once it's sort of past 90 degrees, you can see the boat speed increases dramatically. It looks like it increases quite a lot. But yeah, so maybe that doesn't work. Maybe your boat doesn't go that fast. And so you would adjust the advanced polar. If you have, like, polars can be pretty complex, and I could probably talk about them for the whole time that we're here, but we don't want to do that because we want to get onto other stuff. If you have questions about that, please reach out to our support team. They will help you with your polars and setting up your polars if you have questions around it. So the next thing we want to do, and this is important, is we want to set up our wave polar. I just clicked on that wave polar part there. This is a feature that we added last year, and it gives really, really, really useful information as to the wave conditions that we're going to encounter along our route. And as I said before, you may need to manage you know, where you're going along your route you know, during your passage, as in you might need to slow your boat down, or you might need to head north or south to avoid a system. And this wave polar will will help you with that. So how did we turn that on here? We go, we flick that to on, and we want this here, that advanced wave polar. We actually want that off. And so now we're actually using the new wave polars. This is actually the old wave polar. So we turn that off, and you'll see here it says use predefined boat dimensions. And so that's from our predefined list. We can turn that off, and we might have our boat loaded up with a lot of gear, and we could actually say, well, actually we're 21 tons. Getting this stuff right does have an effect on your weather outing. So spend a bit of time on it, and try and get it right. And the same with the actual boat polar. Spend some time checking that, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So we've set those up. There is some other stuff down here that we can set up. Our route defaults, we can set up depth avoidance. So we don't want it to route anywhere that's shallower than 5 meters. It's using a depth contour or a CMAP depth contour to do that. Tidal and ocean currents, we want to use that in our routing. We want those currents to be taken into account. And I can also select which model I'm using for that, which ocean currents model. We have some advanced routing adjustments there. They're more yacht racing features, so we won't cover those. So we've set up our boat. I've got it on the advanced. Let's just leave it there. But it's what do we have, a Leopard 50. So I flick over here to weather routing, and I could run my route. So we can do this before we depart. We can run lots of routes in here in the PredictWind app, and look at what we can expect for our passage, and also just get used to understanding what the weather routing's telling us. So you see now it's doing the calculating. This would be the same as when you're on your SAT connection. So I'll let this finish. So what I was saying before about seeing what the output looks like, it's not here, it's actually in the tables. So I click on the tables there, and we've got a lot of information. This is all in relation to our weather route. So along the way, and you see here we have our graphs. If I scroll down here, I wanted to talk about the wave because we just turned on our wave polar. So you can see here we're looking at combined wave and swell. We actually can look at any of the wave segments, so the wind wave, the primary, the secondary, and the tertiary. This is really important because obviously if you get those coming at different directions, it changes how your boat's behaving, and it can make the difference between a pleasant trip and a pretty uncomfortable one. And so if we come down here, we've got a bunch of different wave parameters, but what I really want to look at is these features here. So we've got roll, and so this is why we had to put in our boat displacement, length, beam, that sort of stuff, so that the modeling knew what our boat was, and that it's a catamaran, and somewhat and those basic parameters, and it will calculate how your boat is going to behave, well, estimate how your boat's going to behave, and with all of those wave states. So this isn't something that we used to have a year ago, but we do now, and it's very cool. I've had some amazing feedback on this. And so roll is roll in RMS, so root mean squared of your roll. We don't really need to know what that means. It's just that we've got this measure here, and you can see at the start of the trip, we have a fair bit of roll in some of the models. We say here 4 degrees of roll makes the boat difficult and unsafe. I've had some people say to me that they wouldn't do a passage over 3, or they would try and avoid anywhere where the roll was over 3. We also have vertical acceleration, so that's your up and down, and can make people seasick is if you have fast enough vertical acceleration. Obviously, some people have different tolerances to that. But you see here, we've got nothing to worry about on this route so far as our vertical acceleration. We're only at, 0.9 is the highest we see there. 0.09, sorry. So we're under 0.1. We say 0.2 starts to get a bit yuck. But, can depend on the sea state. Slamming incidence is 0. That's your boat, slamming over waves. We're going cruising. We want to sail downwind. So we shouldn't have that anyway, but it's just an indicator that you're going to, you look at this, you're going to see some nasty conditions. Really worth looking into the wave routing stuff, just because it gives you a whole other element to just looking at the wind stuff. Obviously, you can have the wind right, but if you've got, a primary and a secondary and a tertiary swell at slightly different directions and periods, it can make things very uncomfortable. The departure planning tool, I'll just quickly run that because that's how we want to try and pick a window where we're going to avoid some of these nasty conditions. As I said, if we do a longer route, then we can't, we might have to sail around them, and we'll look at that when we flick over to the offshore app in a minute. So we'll just calculate that route there. There is, it says on the screen there, billions of calculations. That is 100% true. It will calculate any scenario, any possible route, using the 6 weather models, which is super handy because you can't just rely on one weather model alone. It is nice to see the different weather models and just hopefully they're all lining up. But when they're not lining up, you want to understand why they're not lining up and what differences you would be looking for with the through the different models, especially if there's an outlier. Why is one model different to the other 5, for instance? So I've run my a departure plan. Normally I'd run that from the shore, of course, but if I come over here to the tables, if I just scroll through this, you can see the boats are departing at different times. And so what we want to do there is come over to our tables here, and I'm actually on the averaged view. I'm just going to move my zoom tools. I'm on the averaged view, so it's actually averaging all the models out for our departure time. So you'll see here we have departure 1, departure 2, departure 3, and departure 4. Our passage time, maximum wind speed, minimum wind speed, average gusts. So we can quickly get some, a good overview of what some conditions we might experience if we left on that time for that entire passage. This is important. Time upwind, basically none. Reaching and downwind, this is good. And we're not really in super high conditions for wind conditions for any of those departure times. And we have our wave, and then we have our wave routing data. So all of those departure times look fine so far as that goes, and also our wind speeds. So sometimes you might see if you leave on day 1, you're going to get a pretty nasty trip versus if you left on day 4. So once you've sort of defined that window and that time period that you want to leave, this is a really good way to help you pick which day you're actually going to depart. Please always sail and depart on your passages based on the weather and good weather. Often when we hear of bad things, it's because people are sailing to schedules from that are driven by outside influences. So choosing your departure times and when you do your passages based on the weather is what we're really here for, but it's very important. So I'm just going to go back to the map, and I'm going to stop sharing this, and we're going to go over to the offshore app, and we're going to cover off some some weather routing in the offshore app, and just show you how to use, give you a brief overview of how to use that tool. So I'll stop sharing, and need to change over to the offshore app, which is somewhere here. Where's it gone? There. Okay. So I have now flicked over to the PredictWind offshore app. Where in the world am I? Let's change where we're going. So you'll see here I have all of these things on the screen. They are all from the GMDSS forecast. They're all written by, so what we've done there is we've taken the Global Marine Distress Service forecasts, which are written by meteorologists for each Met area around the world. And so, so for in New Zealand, where I am, it's, the Met Service. Australia, it's BOM, Fiji, wherever you are, on the coast of the US, it's all NOAA. But why we want to see this is that we can get stuff outside of our grid area. So you'll see here, this is my grid area. And if I'm limited to how much data I can download, I might have a smaller grid area, but I've got all these warnings outside of it. And we've always had the GMDSS forecast, but in text. And so this is just a visual cue that you can then click on those icons and it will actually take you to the written version. I still recommend you look at the written version because it will actually show you stuff that might be happening in 10 days time or more. So definitely worth having a look at. So yeah, so here we are in the offshore app, and I will click on the weather routing tab on this left menu, and obviously I've got an old route in there, so it's not really what we want to look at. But I need to set my start and finish waypoints to where I am now and to where I'm going. And so we can set them lots of ways. We can drag them on the screen like I just did, or we can add, manually type in the lat long. We can add waypoints if we want to. If we wanted to route around a particular point, we can, and we can, just if we took them from our plotter or whatnot, we can do that. If you have an Iridium Go, it will actually put a little white dot on the screen, and you can just move it to the little white dot. And so that's the first thing we need to do. Obviously, as we go through the route, we move to where our boat is and we route from there. You want to be updating your weather at least twice a day, just so that you're, and that would be after the model run time. So the model runs were all done about an hour ago from now. So that would be a good time of the day to then go, okay, you'll get into a routine, and you'll be like, I'm going to do my, I'm going to update my weather routing and get my new gribs at that time of the day. So I've set my start and finish waypoint. If you're using an iPad or an Android tablet or even a phone, don't recommend a phone just because the screen's quite small, but you can use it, and good to have for redundancy, in case someone drops an iPad or, computer gets water on it. These menus are pretty similar. I'm just going to click on the download here on the, on the iPad, for instance. It's a green arrow. We do have tutorials for those, but basically everything's very similar. It's just easier for me to screen share on my Mac. So I click on download. You'll see here I have this estimated file size of 7.9 megabytes. So that is not something I'm going to be able to download on my Iridium Go, and so or even a Go exec. It's still pretty big. You could, but you'd be paying for the data. And the reason that is so big, and I'm going to go to the next screen and turn it off, is I have the ocean data turned on. So I'm going to turn that off, and you'll see I'm still pretty big. And I'm just trying to work out why that. Oh, because I've got a huge grub area. Hang on, let's just cancel that. So probably one of the most important things that we want to do is control our file size. And so when I am on the weather routing tab there, and I move these start and finish waypoints, it's automatically changing my grub area. And you'll see there that it doesn't always get it as good as it could be. For instance, we've got a lot of area above and below. And we may even need to do this type of thing where we're actually not getting the gribs for our entire route, but our weather routing is going to go the whole way. So we've got information about what's going to happen further on in the trip. But obviously, as we go, we move our grib area along. There is another, so this would be, if I was going to do it like this, I might do this download with the smaller area. And then just after I've done sort of basically all of my analysis, I might come back and I might do another download, and I might go for a bigger area like this, but I would only download one model, one grib, and it might be for, at 100-kilometer resolution and a few other things. So I'll show you that in a minute. So we'll set our grib area like this, and then I'll click on download, and you'll see here I have still a pretty big file size for an Iridium Go. That would be fine on the exec. But what I can do here is I can change my number of days. So how many days of gribs I'm looking at. I'm going to get past that grib box in 5 days, and I'm going to also download weather, 10, 15 times before then. So I'll just go to 5 days. And you'll see there my grib file size, my download files, estimated file size has already come down. I can have my time step on 12 or 24. You see I go to 12 and it gets bigger, 24, and it goes smaller again. I can also change my resolution, and that will make my file size smaller. So the grib is there to give us an overview of really what we're seeing in the weather routing. The weather routing is going to use the highest resolution on any, whether you're on standard or pro. It's going to use the smallest time step, which is 3 hours, and it's going to give you routing for the entire length of your route. So after 10 days, it will flick over to the ECMWF ensemble. And so you'll actually see, if you do your weather routing, you do some really long routes in the PredictWind website or PredictWind app, you'll actually see that after 10 days, the screen will go, the weather will sort of flick off, and then it'll reload, and you'll actually be looking at the ensemble. So it's the averaged ensemble, and so it's pretty benign, but it definitely gives you a better indication than using the last grib time step to see your entire route. I'll change that back to 50K. We'll see how our file size goes. 279. That's still pretty big for my Iridium Go, but fine if I want to wait a while. Which you can go away, make a coffee, let it download, drink your coffee. We've got all the models loaded here. I could turn one off if I wanted to and make it smaller. We're going to get all of them in the weather routing. So if we saw one of the routes going somewhere majorly different, we might want to, come back and get that grib and look at it. We can also turn some of these parameters off. Do we need cloud? Do we need temperature? We want rain. We could turn the wave off because we have our wave routing. We're going to see a lot of stuff going on in the tables for the wave routing. We could always come back and get that if we want to. Personally, I would always, obviously we want the wind, we want the pressure, we want the rain so that we can see any frontal bands. we'll get the gusts just so we can, in case it is, there is something a bit nasty. And the CAPE, which is convective available potential energy, pretty big one for the sort of passages you guys are looking at, even down the coast. It's an indicator of thunderstorms. So, if you see CAPE in the forecast, obviously you may want to, and the route that you're going to be in for the next, where you're heading the next 12 hours, that you might change the way that you're sailing. You might, especially at night, you might sail with a reef in, even if you don't need it, just so that if you do get hit by a thunderstorm, all of a sudden you've got 50 knots, you've at least got some sail down, less sail out. We can change our start time. We can do departure planning and a destination forecast on here. Destination forecast is taken from where the red dot is, and it just gives you, if you were in a remote location and you wanted to get 7 days of weather, it will do that. Over here we have our little settings wheel, and this is the same as weather routing preferences if you're in one of the apps in the tablets. So if I click on that, and this is where we can change a bunch of our stuff, and so we can do this underway. You can see here I actually have change over to my advanced polar so that it knows. They do transfer across, so if I do something in there and then I close and then reopen this, the offshore app, it would have transferred across my Leopard 50, but if I've gone to advanced, it should know, unless I get an error, and then we'll know that it hasn't. So my polar speed adjustment. So if I'm underway and I think that it's too fast or too slow, I'm never getting to where the router thinks, I can change these numbers. I could make that 90, I could make that 95, and at night, we're sailing with reduced sail at night and we're just going a bit slow, could make that 80%. So that's 80% of our base polar. And so the router will use that for the rest of our, for that each route that we do from here. We can also turn on our motoring settings. My boat's going to motor at 4 knots if the boat speed and the routing falls below 4 knots or 5 knots. We can change that if we want, and I can change which tidal model I'm using, my depth avoidance, and I can turn my wave polar on and off if I want to. So yeah, we can also use comfort settings. I'm not a fan of them. I prefer to run the route for fastest route. If I don't like something, I will add a boundary or a waypoint to avoid it. So I'll just close that there. Our start time, we've got now. We're going to get the GMDSS forecasts. If we wanted to, we could get some observations if there was. We'll just try it, see if we get any information. There might be some weather boys out there. It's just a nice way of validating what's in the grids, but it's not, I'm not sure whether we're going to get data or not, but obviously once you're doing this, when you're underway, you're going to know what you're getting. We'll just click on next. You see I've got the ocean data turned off. The ocean data will be displayed in my tables if I'm on the pro version. The ocean data is used in your weather routing regardless of what subscription level you're on. Satellite imagery, I'm not a fan of it, but you can get the satellite imagery if you wish, to see the bigger situation. I'll turn the YB events off. Because you're all in the rally, you can download your GPS tracking and you will see where everyone else is in the rally. And we're also going to get the AIS data. So you see I've got 212 kilobytes. That's easy download on my go. I come over here and didn't realize I had this piece of something. We can have our Iridium Go or Iridium Go Exec, or satellite tab if you've got a high-speed connection, email if you're using SSB. Obviously, we're on the web, and So we're just going to download it. You can see here I've got all my estimated file sizes. You'll see them change as we download them. I'm going to just click on download all down the bottom there. If I was on the Iridium Go, I would have selected that tab or the Go exec, and I would have also needed to change my Wi-Fi to that. When you're on the boat, you have it connected to whatever your sat device is all the time anyway. And you'll see there it's downloading all of our grids and my GMDSS, my observations, my GPS tracking data. I've got no idea what group I'm in that I'm getting that much GPS tracking data. And you'll see there my weather route is still calculating. And so that's the same as when we were on the web connection before. It's got to crunch, 50 megabytes of data on our servers, and then it's crunched that data and it's come back to me. So the thing to note here is the times, the dates and the times. This tells us when so look here, let's look at ECMWF, and it's got the date of the model run and the time. So that's local to the local time on my computer. You're probably looking at that going, he's in the future. Certainly am. Yeah, that's the local time on my computer, 8 o'clock this morning. That grid was updated. The SPY was updated at 8:45. UKMO was updated at 5:50 a.m. So yeah, all those times are there. So, and obviously my weather route was run right now. So I'll just click on close, and I have all my data here. And so we can see for my entire route, I've got the true wind speed. This is my average wind speed. The weather routing is always using the average wind speed. It's not using the gusts to calculate your route. And the true wind direction throughout my route, true wind angle, looks like we're reaching nearly the whole way. That looks, a bit of downwind there. Rain, Cape. So we can see we've got rain and Cape at particular times around the 8th of February and a bit later on. So not a massive worry for right now, but we may want to consider that further on, and we might want to look at what's causing that, and we might route around that area, for instance. Temperature, it increases as we go along. Pressure, we can compare that with the pressure that we're seeing with our barometer on board, and our wave height, wave direction, wave period. It's important to see our wave period goes down there. That's interesting. Very short period there. And we'll have a look at that particular point when we come down here. So this is the influence that the waves are having on our polar. Looks like they're mostly behind us because they're actually speeding us up a bit. And you'll see here our roll gets less as the trip goes on. Might be a little bit rough at the start. And then our vertical acceleration, again, gets better as we go on. So even with that short period of the waves, it doesn't get too nasty. So everything must be going the same direction, and they must be quite small. We have over here, I click on this wind tab, and this is where before I should have mentioned about checking our polar. And so, the true wind speed here, 12.6 knots. Average 136 degrees, true wind angle, speed over ground 8.3 knots. Sounds pretty good. Does my boat do that? You'd want to this is where you can adjust your polar if these numbers don't reflect what you actually do. Important to get it right, because otherwise the router thinks you're going to be somewhere where you're not. Bit of a summary of our route there. And then we can look through here and look at all the models. You'll see here we get some warnings. And so, yes, this is the thunderstorm warnings that I said before, that we could see some higher levels of Cape. And so we've just got these warnings there telling us that that's what that will be. There'll be rain, and Cape will be giving us this warning. So if I flick over to the map, we've got all of our other stuff in here. I realized I started late and I'm now over time, but I'll just carry on. And if you have to jump off, this is being recorded. So we have all the information for all the different models in here, and we can see what my polar speed adjustment was, and what polar I'm using. I'm using the advanced polar, So, and my motoring settings, etc. You know, we have our wave, current, atmosphere. So all that stuff in there. Let's just flick over to the map. And you'll see here, you're like, oh, he hasn't got any weather. And that's because we had that grib area. I zoom in. It's a very big area we're looking at. I think I've gone to the wrong place anyway. Not that matters. So you'll see here we have all of our routes. The different colors of the routes relate to different weather models. You can see here we have all of the models, apart from the ECMWF, want us to go slightly south west here. ECMWF wants us to go north. The reason for that could be that later in the passage, I suspect, that thinks we'll get there faster. If it were me, I would stick with the consensus, and then you know, run with that. So when we see the routes diverging, you know, down here, we don't need to worry about this because we're going to be running. So how far away is that? So let's say I ran that now. So by the time I got to Thursday, I would actually be updating my weather about when I got to here. So I'd actually be, okay, I've sailed to here, and I would be updating my route again from here. And so then I run my weather routing again, and you'll see that with the new model run, the models have usually come into alignment, and you will see everything, you know, that this divergence will be, you know, we'll have a clear path in the shorter term, and we can look at the longer term stuff as well. If I zoom out, you'll see here we have this little warning, and that's our thunderstorm warning. So what I could do, I mean, I can't see that now, the Cape. So how I change what I'm looking at, so probably should have mentioned this. Here's all my different weather models. I can change between them. You'll see the little boat changes as I change on each route. I can also click on any of the routes and get the information for that particular point on the route. And so if I look at those, and I can see, you know, all of the details for that point of the route. Let's come down here and have a look. See, the Cape is not super high. In the EC, maybe it's the GFS that has a higher level. Excuse me, my computer's falling over. Well, fat fingers. We can click on a different route, and I'll zoom in. And you'll see there's my warnings have come up on that route. So yeah, it's the GFS that thinks that we're going to have some thunderstorms in at this time, and also the fact that it's yeah. So what do we got? Yeah, so the Cape is at nearly 2,000. There's a small amount of rain. You always need moisture with your Cape to get your thunderstorms as a general rule of thumb. So but something worth looking for. GPS tracking. So you can all get the GPS tracking from us as long as you have a device that can send your position, or you can do, you know, even send manual positions yourself. I'll click on it. I've got no idea what group I'm in. No, you can just see my account there. If I was in a group, you would be able to see everybody in the group. And you could click on them and see their blog posts. So you can see, I've got a blog post there. And you'd be able to see, you could click on it, each individual boat, and see their blog posts, so you can see what's going on board other boats. You know, they might talk about the weather, they might talk about how things are on board, and yeah, it's pretty cool to be able to see. Just download, you can download that over your SAT connection while you're underway. It's super cool. If you haven't set that up, contact support@predictwind.com and they will help you with that, say that you're in the PPJ, and away you go. Just one more thing that I wanted to talk about before I wrap this up is if I come back over here to Grub, and I talked before about downloading a bigger area, so I can change my Grub area like this, and then I can go to download, and what I will do is I can just turn off all the other models, and I can, I could increase the number of days if I wanted. I can change the resolution, and I could turn everything else off. I don't actually need to. I can turn, the GMDSS because I've already got that, and so I don't need it. But I can just come over here, click on next. Observations area is too large, that's fine. And then I could just download that one Grub. I can just click on the button there, 57 kilobytes, and I've got that big area of just the ECMWF. And then before we were talking about rain, so I can scroll through here, scroll through the different times and see what's happening. I should have turned my weather routing off because I've actually cleared it by doing that. I can see my cape. This is what we were talking about before, that we could see that as we get towards the end of our passage, there's pretty consistent levels of higher cape. And so, something we'd want to watch for, that we, around our thunderstorms. I think that's pretty much me for now. I think Kieran has been answering the Q&A. There's no open questions that I can see. So I will wrap that up there, unless Kieran has anything else for me. If you have any questions, please reach out to our support team. They're there to help. They're awesome. They're sailors. They know what they're talking about. So support@predictwind.com. You get to talk to awesome people like Kieran. And yeah, they can answer any questions that you have about using PredictWind. So yeah, thank you for listening.